Chullin Daf Zayin. There are only 3 times in Shas where Rabbi Yochanan argues with Rish Lakish that the halacha is like Rish Lakish. Only 3 times. Says the Gemara, this following question that we have is not one of the 3 times because Rabbi Yochanan admits to Rish Lakish that he's right. The question is, yesterday we were discussing a broken bone that you could use meat around it. If you have roiv bas around it, then it's not considered a treifa. And we said we could also use part of the skin. Can you use tendons and meat together to cover the bone? The answer is that Rish Lakish holds by Korban Pesach that a tendon is not considered meat. So therefore, if it's not considered meat, then it's not considered meat by us. We can't consider it to cover the bone. Abai had a question. What if this broken bone is missing part of the bone? Does the animal become treif or not? He waited 3 Yamim Tovim for Talmidei Chachamim to come and gather, and he asked them. He still couldn't come up with some solid answer. So they said, why don't you just ask Rava, your friend? You always argue with him. Why don't you ask him? He's considered a sakina charifa, sharp knife, sharp brain. In fact, he asked him, and Rava was medayik from the Brisa that even if it's missing a piece, which will eventually heal, then this animal is not a treifa. So the Gemara has 8 very short questions regarding this meat that surrounds the bone, and the Gemara remains in a suffix on all of them. The first question is, what if the meat is splotchy? It's in all different places, not connected, but if you put them together, you have a roiv. What if there's a hole through the meat? What if there's a sedek, there's some sort of crack in the meat? What if the meat peeled? What if the meat is decaying and it has to be removed with a knife? What if the third lower layer touching the bone is missing? The Gemara wanted to say for a second, well, you don't even need meat. If you just have skin, the halacha is that that's considered a cover. The Gemara said, well, maybe that halacha with the skin is only regarding the foot where there's absolutely no meat to begin with, so then the skin is good enough. But in our case, where there's meat, some of it is missing, maybe it's not good. And finally, the Gemara asks, what if around the fracture, there's a whole circle, like a ring, missing meat? Says the Gemara, they asked doctors, they asked Rabbanim, Talmidei Chachamim, and they came up that if you take another bone and you rub it on the meat and you cause it to bleed, the meat will adhere to the bone and it will regenerate. And therefore, it's considered a healing process, and this animal will be kosher, provided that you wait a little bit to see that it actually catches on. Says the Mishnah, if an animal gave birth and we found the placenta. Now, I personally think the placenta is one of the grossest foods in the world, and if I were to eat it, I would be over on Baal Teshaksu. And the same halacha would apply to many others. However, if this individual decided he wants to eat the placenta, says the Mishnah, he could go ahead and eat it, and therefore he created a food here. He took something that's not food and he made it food. On the other hand, he didn't make it into meat. You can never create meat just by thinking about it. So it'll turn into food and be susceptible to tumas oichlin, but it won't be susceptible to tumas nevela. Says the Gemara that if part of the placenta came out, there is no such thing as a placenta without a fetus, and therefore we have to be concerned that there was a fetus in there, you just don't see it, and it's also to eat, and this halacha you would know all on your own without a pasuk, but the Gemara brings a pasuk anyways as an asmachta. If this placenta was the first birth for this animal, or even a human, then we have to be concerned that it's a bachar, and her next baby is not a bachar. Now, going back to an animal, if this is her first born, then says the Mishnah, you're allowed to feed this placenta to a dog. You don't have to treat it with respect. We don't have to be concerned that maybe it's a male bachar. Why? Because there's only a 49% chance, let's say, that it's a male bachar. Because at every birth, there's a 50-50 chance that it's a male or female. And there's also another small percentage of pregnancies that are not male or female. There's some other object in there. And therefore, there's a lower than 50% chance that this is a bachar, and you don't have to treat it with respect. On the other hand, if we're talking about a carbon and there's a kedusha here, then kachim, then you have to be concerned that there's probably a 99% chance that this is a carbon, because a carbon can be male or female, and there's a very slight chance that it's neither, but that's a very, very small chance, and therefore you have to bury this animal if it's a carbon. Says Gemara, if you made some sort of stew out of the other parts of the animal that are not meat, such as the hide, skin, the hooves, the horn, bones, then you cannot create tumas nevela, like we said before. It doesn't turn into meat. But if you create a stew out of just the skin, then you could create food. You can make it softer, and for you it's food, and therefore it becomes tamei tumas oichlem. The Gemara remains in a suffix. What if you take the skin of a donkey? Since it's so disgusting, maybe even if you cook it, it doesn't turn into food. Says the Gemara that according to Rabbi Yochanan, in our Mishnah, when there's a placenta, the Mishnah is talking about that there's no other fetus visible. And therefore, we have to be chayshish that what you have here in the placenta is the fetus that was supposed to be in the stomach. Now, it doesn't matter, says Rabbi Yochanan, if the placenta is attached to the fetus, not attached to the fetus. Either way, we say that what we see in front of us, if there's a fetus, this is the fetus, then the placenta belongs to it. So therefore, Rabbi Yochanan is mekel. Rabbi Eliezer, on the other hand, says that if there's a fetus here, the placenta has to be attached to it. And if the placenta is not attached to it, then we are concerned that maybe there's a twin over here, and we don't know about it. The Gemara brings a similar case, a very interesting case. What if a woman gives birth to something that resembles a giraffe or a rhinoceros, some other animal, not a human being? Says the Gemara that if the placenta is attached to that creature, according to Chachamim, anything other than a baby, boy, girl, doesn't create tumas yoledes. So typically when a woman gives birth, even if there's no blood, it's a dry birth, then she would be tamei automatically. 7 days for a boy, 14 days for a girl. But if she gives birth to some sort of creature, then there's absolutely no tumah whatsoever. On the other hand, there's also no yimei tahara. She doesn't get any free days. So if she saw blood after a while, she doesn't get any free days. Whereas if she gave birth to a girl, she would have 14 days of tumah and 66 days of free days of tahara. So here's where it becomes very interesting. What if she gave birth to a giraffe and a placenta? For the giraffe, she gets 0 days of tahara. For the placenta, now we have to be concerned. Maybe there was a baby and a baby girl in there. So baby girl, you have to be machmer on everything. So she would get 14 days of tumah for the baby girl and 0 days of yimei tahara. Why? Because maybe in the placenta, that's the placenta of the giraffe, and the giraffe gets 0 yimei tahara. She doesn't get any yimei tahara. Now, finally, the Mishnah talks about darkei moiri. We have to be concerned to imitate the goyim and not to do any heebie-jeebie things. So therefore, a person should not take a stillborn and bury him at the fork in a road. That's what the Amorim would do. And at the same time, you can't hang the placenta on a tree like the Amorim. So the Gemara brings a few things that are interesting for our days. You're allowed to color. Now, Rashi says, the Gemara says, that anything that's for refuah, meaning, and Rashi explains, that the sick person is here in front of us, you're allowed to give them a sam, a drink, and also lachash, you're allowed to say words that really don't have any basis in science over the person. And that's a question, because there's a Mishnah in Sanhedrin says that you're not allowed to whisper things, but maybe Rashi's talking about in a case of pikuach nefesh, you're allowed to. And it's a big sugya, but the bottom line from our sugya is that if the sick person is not in front of you, you're not allowed to do it over the phone, but if the person is here in front of you, you're allowed to do refuah on them, especially if there's basis in science, like the Gemara says. Now, you're allowed to paint a tree red, and that's not darkei moiri, because that's a sign to other people that they should daven on the tree if it's not bearing fruit. Like the Gemara says, by a Metzora, he screams out, Tame, Tame, have Rachmanas Ami, daven for me. What's very interesting that the Gemara says that if somebody had something bad to him happen, the Gemara uses a lashon, Tzarich lo yidiyah l'rabim, you must tell other people so that they daven for you. Hadron aloch behima maksha, and with this we are Messiah Perik behima maksha. Have a wonderful day.